You get a donated kidney and you haven't become the person whose kidney you took. You donate a kidney, you don't lose your experience of self or half of your experience of self. Donate blood, receive blood. There's no exchange of self in that. Break your arm, have to get it amputated. Okay, that's a severe bummer, but you haven't lost yourself. So you go through all of that, and then you get to the physical part of my brain, right? I mean, so we all know I'm not my actual neurons. I'm not the gray matter. I'm not the white matter. I'm not the myelin sheaths covering my axons. Okay. But if I know that I'm not the neurons, and I know that I'm not the myelin sheaths that are covering the axons, and I know that I'm not the chemicals that are in the vesicles that are being secreted into the synapses between the neurons, if I know that I'm not that, then why do I think I am the result of that? The result of that is what I think. The result of that is how I feel. So if I'm not the chemicals, and I'm not the electricity that's running down the cell, how could I possibly be the result of it? So I'm not the chemicals, but I'm the pattern of chemicals. I'm not the electricity, but I'm the pattern of electricity. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So when you know that you're not the physical chemistry, you're not the physical electricity, then obviously you're also not the resulting electrical and chemical patterns, which is what we tend to call things like depression or anxiety, anger, sadness, longing, memory, fear, aggression. Depending on where in the brain it is, we've got different names for it, but every aspect of it, 100% of that which you could name as an emotion, as a feeling, as a state of being, is due to the electricity and the chemistry of your brain. Doesn't make it bad, just makes it, that's what it is. And when you believe in God, it makes it really beautiful. Like, wow. I mean, what a planner. What an incredible system. That I've got this network of trillions of cells that actually come together in something that feels as coherent as I am angry, or I am depressed, or I am joyful. Instead of getting wrapped up necessarily in what's coming out of it, can you stop for a moment in awe at just the incredible, complex beauty of a planner who can take 5 trillion cells and make them give you something as seemingly coherent as an instruction to slap someone. I mean, that's just actually a marvel of science. Regardless of how dysfunctional the pattern itself may be, the fact that these patterns exist is a marvel of science. But it's not who you are. It's a way whether you believe in God or don't believe in God. So either it's, wow, that's incredible science, or wow, God, that's an incredible plan. But either way, it's not who you are. So I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my emotions. And again, if you still doubt it, if I am my thought, then in that rare but ever so precious moment that I'm able to touch between thoughts, that stillness that I'm able to touch, I would cease to exist. If I am my thought, and I manage to get, even for a split second, thoughtless, I would cease to exist. And if I ceased to exist, then who would be the one to have the next thought? Who would be the one to break that thoughtless stillness? So clearly we're not ceasing to exist between our thoughts, which means we are not our thoughts. And so that way in is we just remove all of that which is not self. I'm taking my clothes off, layer by layer by layer. You want to get naked? Take them off. You want to know the true self? Take off that which isn't true. Rather than identifying with whether it's the literal clothes or the metaphoric clothes, or that which is beneath them, or the chemistry of our incredible brain, or the places that this physical vehicle has been, or the things that have happened to it. And if you were driving your car and somebody rear-ended you, you wouldn't come home and say, I'm damaged, or I'm dented, my paint is coming off. You understand that's the car. That's the vehicle. You're the driver of the car. But in the same way, if somebody hits you or harms you, you feel, I am abused. I am dented. I am damaged. No, this body. It's the vehicle. Like the car is the vehicle. So, to know that which is not the conditioned self is to remove the layers of the conditioned self. And that's that practice of neti neti. Not this, not that. And ultimately, once you've realized that you're not everything you can think of, you reach a beautiful place of stillness. There's nothing left to say you're not. And in that stillness, an experience of what you are emerges. It's not that you figure it out. It's not a semantic awakening. It's not that you necessarily have the words for it, but you have the experience of it in that space. So go in both ways. Remove that which is not the true self, and do along the way as much as you can to keep having the experience of true self. And between the two, you'll get there. Just take every opportunity. Call it what it is. As you move through the world, eyes open, moving through the world, remind yourself over and over again, not self. So you're standing in line at a grocery store. It's taking the lady too long to check you out. You're annoyed. You're frustrated. Not self. Just remind yourself of that. Not in a berating, belittling, horrible, you're bad sort of way. Do it with a smile. Do it with love and compassion for your conditioned self that's really doing the best it can. But just remind yourself, not self. Not truth. Look in the mirror. You feel, oh my God, I'm great looking. I'm so beautiful. I'm so handsome. Remind yourself, not self. Again, doesn't mean how dare you feel good about yourself. People love shiny cars, no problem. Love how your body looks, no problem. It's great. We should love our bodies. Again, incredible creations of God or science, however you look at it. But we don't identify as them. Same thing if what you're feeling is negative. Oh my God, I'm so ugly. I look so bad today. Not self. Not truth. Just keep reminding yourself. Whatever you do. Someone appreciates you. They say, wow, great work. That was fantastic. You did a great job. You feel good. And again, nothing wrong with it. Compliments feel great. We should give way more of them to each other and to ourselves, by the way, but not self. Again, doesn't mean it's bad. Feels really nice if you do that on your hand. Nice if you do it on your arm. Nothing wrong with it. The body's allowed to feel nice, but it's not self. My emotions are allowed to feel good, but not self. So just keep reminding yourself, whether it's positive or negative that you're feeling, either way, just keep reminding yourself, not self, not truth. And just as much as you can, keep dropping into the spaciousness. Drop into the spaciousness. And eventually you'll get there. You're coming back home to yourself. You're not going to outer space for which you need all sorts of degrees and credentials. This is inner space, and the only prerequisite is sincerity. So if you can muster that, you can get anywhere. Before taking any of the others that have come in advance, I wanted to open it up if there are any questions here. I would be happy to take them. Yes. How do you forgive when you don't want to forgive? Well, you can't. You can't do anything you don't want to do, really. Anything that requires the mind. Parents can drag their kids to school, to museums, to the library, to places where kids may or may not be interested in going. You can drag the physical body, but you can't drag the mind. And forgiveness requires the active engagement of the mind. So you have to want to forgive. So the way into that would be how to convince yourself to want to forgive, right? First, you have to look at why you don't want to forgive. And it's interesting, we look at this a lot when you're dealing with people with addictions. I want to quit smoking. But then you discover as it goes along that actually the person doesn't want to quit smoking. What they want is, they want to quit smoking. The intellectual brain knows that quitting smoking would be a really good idea. It's much better for their health. I mean, so intellectually they've kind of got it. But they don't really want it inside, so they want to quit smoking, which doesn't usually work. You can't usually let something go that's got a grip on you until you really want to let it go. And so with forgiveness, we go in by saying, well, the fact that I'm holding on to this is actually keeping me stuck. I'm a prisoner. They've done what they did and moved on. I'm keeping myself stuck. And why would I do that? Why would I voluntarily give up my freedom? Someone hurt me, physically, emotionally, financially, sexually, whatever ways people take advantage of us. I've been hurt. Why would I voluntarily keep hurting myself? And that's a really important question, because until you answer that, you're not going to be able to want to forgive. And for most of us, it stems from a couple of places. One is I may not want to hurt myself, but in some aspect of my brain, I believe that if I forgive them, it means what they did is okay. That somehow I am the moral police, and that if I forgive, the universe will forgive. And if I forgive, the universe will absolve them of their karmic dues. And that's just not the case. We don't have that power, even if you wanted to. We don't have the power. The law of karma is science. It's like the law of gravity. You can walk off a building and you're going to plummet to the ground. Whether you or someone on the ground is saying, you can fly, you can fly, you can fly. You can't. You're going to fall. Law of gravity. The law of karma says, what you plant, you will reap. And so if someone has planted seeds, even if they or you are saying, let it go, it's okay, absolve him, you don't have that power any more than you have a power to make somebody grow wings and fly when they've stepped off a building. They've put in motion an action that is going to end with them going splat on the ground. If someone has harmed us, they have put in motion an action that is going to end with them receiving the fruits of that, the bitter fruits of that. And there's nothing that you can do to absolve them. And so your forgiveness of them is not about absolving them. Your forgiveness is letting yourself be free. Your forgiveness says, okay, they've hurt me once. I'm going to stop hurting myself over and over and over again. I didn't deserve it the first time, and I certainly don't deserve it all of the times I've been doing it to myself since then. I deserve to be free. So that's one of the core reasons that we don't forgive, is that belief that somehow forgiving means it's okay, and it's not. And that's not what forgiving means. Forgiving simply means you've locked yourself in jail through your own actions. You're going to get that karmic fruit. I don't want to be in jail with you. I don't want to lock myself up along with you. And so we forgive and let go. The other reason we don't forgive is on some level inside of ourselves, we believe that we deserved it. Or if we didn't necessarily believe that we deserved exactly what they did, that we somehow deserve the pain we deserve to suffer. And so we don't forgive ourselves there either, because I'm going to let myself keep suffering because I believe on some level that I don't deserve to be free. And that comes from this very warped but very conditioned and very common belief that so many of us have. That we're not enough, that we're not good enough, that there's something inherently wrong with us. And that's what you have to let go of. You didn't deserve what the person did, and you don't deserve to keep hurting yourself. But you need to let go. And you let go because you deserve to be free. That is your birthright, freedom. But you have voluntarily given up your freedom and locked yourself in a jail cell with that person. So you forgive because it's the only way out of jail. Not for them, but for you. And that's why we forgive. So allow yourself to realize whatever it is that anyone did, they did it out of their own ignorance, their fear, their anger, their ego, their lust, their greed, their feelings of smallness that required them to extort power from you in order to feel it in themselves. All of the things that make people hurt us stem from their own ignorance. But we don't carry their ignorance with us. Let them work it out. You know, we've got this beautiful, beautiful couch that was just recently, a few months ago, recovered very nicely in this nice creamy color. Now imagine that after satsang, you and I are sitting together on the couch, and I go in the kitchen and I tell these guys, make us some hot tea. Maybe even I go in the kitchen and I make it myself. And we sit here and we're drinking hot tea, and you spill your tea. Maybe you even spill it purposely. Maybe I was talking a little bit too much about how nice my new white couch was. And maybe you spill it purposely, maybe you don't spill it purposely. Either way, you spill the tea. And then you get up and you walk out. Now, what am I going to do? Am I going to chase you down with a sponge in my hand? Get back here. Clean up your mess. No. I'm going to go get a sponge and I'm going to clean it. Because what I know is, even in the 5 minutes it may take me to track you down, that stain is going to become permanent on my couch. Tea is a very powerful stainer. I don't want to lose those 5 minutes. I've got some water here. I'm going to immediately pour it. Get a sponge really fast. I'll deal with you later. But at the moment, I've got to take care of my stain. Is there anyone here who would leave the stain on their couch just so that next time you came back, I could say to you, look what you did to my couch? Right? Next year you come back to Rishikesh and I'm sitting on this smelly, fly-infested couch and I say, you're the one. You're the one, my couch. You'd think, crazy lady. A year she's been sitting on a smelly, fly-infested couch? I'm the one who has to sit here. You walked away. My couch. I want it clean. I don't want it fly-infested. I don't want it smelly. Well, if we've got that much of a vision of how to take care of our couches, what about our hearts? It's the same thing. Somebody comes and they spill something on your heart. Purposely, accidentally. You were doing something really nice. Next thing you know, they've stained you in some way. But very few of us spend the next minutes and hours dropping everything and doing whatever we need to do to ensure that that thing does not actually stain my heart for good. Very few of us do that. First, we spend a long time letting that stain sink in. Like, I'm just going to sit here and wait for that tea stain to become permanent. We let that stain sink in. And then we get up and we run after that person, trying to get them to come back and clean up the stain. Or if we can't find them, or if logistically, whatever the situation may be, we continue to sit on the stained couch so that that person finally will realize or forgive or feel bad. or so that we can show others, look, I'm a victim of this. Oh, satsang was boring tonight? Well, that's because I've got a really smelly, fly-infested couch. It's not my fault. I mean, I really can't concentrate because, you know, that smell that comes from the couch. So it becomes this excuse, this built-in excuse for why we're not fully embracing our lives. Oh, well, I'm not embracing my life because this and this happened. I've got this stain on me. And that's why I can't perform, I can't love, I can't move, I can't open up. So if we've got the vision to take care of our couches, let us care for our hearts as much as we can care for our couches. I mean, a couch, you could replace it if you needed to. But you've only got one heart. Yeah, people will stain it. That's their karmic package. But let us dedicate ourselves to keeping it stain-free. Have that sponge ever ready. That's what our spiritual practices are. That's what meditation is. That's what japa is. That's what prayer is. That's what service is. These are the sponges that immediately heart has become stained, okay. These are the sponges I grab and immediately clean the stain. And if it's been there for a while, no problem. Fortunately, on the heart, there's nothing permanent. It's got its own nicely built-in, no-stick surface. You just have to scrub a little bit harder if it's been caked on for too long. But you do that because you're the one who has to live with your heart, not the other guy. They're not coming back to clean up their mess. No one is coming back to clean up their mess. We are the ones who have to do it. Doesn't mean people who hurt us will never realize it. Doesn't mean we'll never get an apology. But until and unless we have cleaned up our own hearts, no apology will ever be right. They haven't used the right words, they did it in the wrong way, it took them so long, they did it under duress, whatever it is. But we have these conversations all the time with people, right? Someone hurts us, we're holding a grudge. They say, fine, what do you want me to say for God's sakes? And you say, well, at least apologize. And they say, fine, I'm sorry. Well, no, that you didn't say it the right way. These are very, very common, sort of standard conversations, right? I want you to feel it. Okay, I really feel it. Well, you're just saying that because I told you to. Until I've actually cleaned it in my heart, what you're trying to do or say will never be right. So we have to clean it personally. Then the other guy comes back, consider it a bonus. But do not ever expect anyone to come back and clean up their mess. Figure out what your sponges are. What's your soap? What are your sponges? And clean it inside. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't be the ones cleaning it. Of course they should. They're the ones who stained it. But that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant in the reality of our lives. We live too frequently in our vision of an ideal world rather than in the real world. What I mean by that is we should always hold an ideal. Yes, people should be peaceful and loving and caring and patient and compassionate and generous. Of course they should. And of course we should hold out an ideal that everyone will heal their own hearts, that everyone will awaken to the truth of who they are, their own wholeness, their own perfection, and they will stop moving through the world clumsily and violently and unskillfully, harming people along the way. But that's not the reality of today, right now. The only thing we can change today is us. And so just because the other guy should do it, that's the ideal. The real is, it's my heart. And I'm the only one who's going to clean it. I'm the only one living with that smell, living with the flies, living with the festering wound. Clean it yourself. Not because you deserved it, not because you're bad, not because you're wrong, but because your heart is precious. It is precious. And you deserve it to be stainless. And you have the tools to make it stainless. As long as you let go of waiting for someone else to come in and do it. And the greatest sponge and greatest soap is forgiveness. To let it go. Again, not because it was right, but because you deserve to be free. You deserve to have a heart that isn't stained. Yeah. And you're in a very sacred, special place to do that. Ganga takes things. Yes. So, those who have known the true self have pointed the way to it for all of the rest of us. This is where all of the spiritual teachings come. This is where we've got in all of our religions. This is not just a Hindu teaching. This is in all of our religions. If you look at the mystical lineages within our traditions, they all point us, go inward, meditate, right? Whatever religion you look at, they've all got sort of their mystical traditions within them that send you in to meditate. So that's the way in that those who have known it point to. And where did it come from? Well, this is the beautiful aspect of the soul, the spirit, the self, is what Lord Krishna gives us in the Bhagavad Gita is actually a very, very beautiful, very simple, very succinct way of understanding it. He says, the soul, the true self, was never born, will never die, cannot be burned by fire, cannot be dried by wind, cannot be wet with water. The true self is untouchable. So it never came into existence. It never didn't exist. And it's not different from the others. A good way to think about it is if you think about waves on the ocean. So the ocean ocean is one, but the wave forms are different. And so if you look at a wave, two ways to look at it. Wave, ocean. Which is the highest truth? Well, in that exact moment, that exact intersection of time and space, yeah, there's a wave. It's not an optical illusion. When we say Maya, when we say illusion, we don't mean optical illusion. We don't mean your eyes are playing tricks on you and you're just seeing water come up and go down. There is a wave. And if you doubt that, jump into it if you can't swim. You're going to discover the impact of the wave, right? You could drown. If not, you're going to find yourself at least flat on your face with a mouthful of sand. So the illusion of separateness, the illusion of the form is not an optical illusion. It's an illusion as in you're identifying with that, which isn't really true. If you take a glass or a spoonful or an eyedropper full of wave and you look at it under a microscope, what do you see? Ocean. There's no way to tell under a microscope, this is wave. It's ocean. Looks exactly like every glass, every spoon, every dropper full of water from the ocean. So the highest truth of the wave is ocean. In fact, Thich Nhat Hanh, a very, very divine and beautiful Buddhist teacher, says enlightenment is when the wave realizes it's ocean. So there's differences. Yes, one wave can be small, another wave can be big. People who surf can tell very specific differences of waves, good wave, bad wave. But at the core, there's actually no difference between them. At the core, it's all ocean. The only difference is in this very, very temporary rising and falling of form. And that's what's individual. So the difference is in the vehicle, but those who have experienced the self, what they come out with is descriptions of ocean. Descriptions of oneness, descriptions of wholeness, descriptions of infinity. Because that's what it realizes. Yes. Okay, so we'll take this as our last question. The difference between consciousness and pure awareness. It's always interesting, it's always fun, it's always challenging. When you start looking at distinctions in English words of words that actually weren't English to begin with, and in many cases the English translation is not exactly right anyway, because we may not actually have the word in English for it. And so then you start splitting hairs between words that actually weren't the exact translation anyway to begin with. So that's an important aspect to remember before we even start looking at this, is when we talk about the spiritual, the scriptural teachings on consciousness and awareness, those were not the words they used. Those are the best that our English translators have come up with, but don't get too hung up on them. What I would say is consciousness is what we are, and awareness is the directed attention to that. So consciousness is what we are, and awareness is when I direct my attention to that. I'm conscious. I'm consciousness rather, even when I'm not aware. So I could be wrapped up in my wave-like form. I could be wrapped up in not self. I could be wrapped up in my identity. Full of ego, I could be absolutely in that ignorance. Doesn't change the fact that the truth of who I am is consciousness. I'm just not aware of it. When you say pure awareness, I think what you mean is to exist in a state in which my attention is in my hands and in my control enough, either through great practice or great grace, that I can be fully attentive to my consciousness at all times. That I don't get pulled away from it. If you say I'm living in pure awareness, well, awareness of what? Awareness of the fact that I'm consciousness. So if it's pure awareness, awareness itself is always pure. It's sort of the nature of awareness. If I'm really aware, it is pure. If it's muddled, it's not awareness, it's ignorance. So awareness is always pure, but if we say pure awareness, if you're going to club it together like that, to me what that would mean is an unbroken state of directed attention at the consciousness I am. But again, where we began, don't get lost in semantics. It becomes a game then of the brain. Is this consciousness or is this awareness? What did she say? Directed what? Oh, right, yes, attention. Okay, attention. Am I attentive or am I aware? And then you're actually neither. You're just distracted and frustrated. So don't let yourself get too lost in that. Yes. I'm sorry? So again, what we're doing is we're translating Sanskrit to English. The Yoga Sutras were given to us in Sanskrit. I'm working from the English translations. Regardless, what's important, and now that you mentioned that we're looking at it from the perspective of yoga, well, so this is great because consciousness is who I am, and ultimately when you get to samadhi and our 8 limbs of yoga, samadhi is the merging, right? We go up through the limbs through my withdrawal of the senses, right? Forget the physical part. Move beyond that. We get into our withdrawal of the senses. We then get into our single-pointed attention. We then get into meditation. And then we get from meditation into samadhi. Well, so what happens between meditation and samadhi? The meditator and the object of meditation become one. I'm meditating on you. I'm meditating on this aspect of God, or I'm meditating on this image, or that prayer, or that word, or whatever it may be. But in meditation, there's a meditator, and there's an object of meditation. And then, of course, there's the act of meditating. In samadhi, they've become one. That's the union. When we say yoga, that's the union that we refer to. The self with the divine. So the pure conscious, or the consciousness, is who I am. The merging into that, the drop into the ocean, is what yoga does for us. That's ultimately the whole point of yoga. You are the drop in your identity. You identify as the drop, or you identify as the wave, however, whatever works for you. Ultimately, the goal is merge with the ocean. In order to do that, I need to have pure awareness. Constant awareness. If I'm pulled out of awareness, if I get lost, if I'm doing my posture but I'm making a shopping list in my mind, I'm not living as consciousness, I'm living as the shopper. If I'm doing the pose and I'm upset because, you know, my hamstrings are too tight and I can't bend down enough, I'm the body, not consciousness. And so this is where in yoga the emphasis on awareness comes in, pure awareness, meaning unbroken awareness, unadulterated, unmuddied awareness. A stillness of the mind, right? We're told yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. So when the waves stop fluctuating, my awareness is pure or constant, unbroken, unmuddled. I'm then living as consciousness. I'm united. And that, by the way, lastly, is something that as the highest call, the highest aspect of yoga, is something that's actually attainable through any of the different paths. We're given 8 limbs, and we usually talk about them sequentially, but they're not actually at the deepest level. They're not actually rungs on a ladder. It's not that you begin with ahimsa and you end up with samadhi. It's actually all-inclusive, and they're all ways in to yoga. So there's a lot of people who consider themselves deep yogis who may have never done an asana in their life. On the other hand, there's people for whom the asana practice may be the main practice. Well, if done right, it can actually get you there. It's much, much harder. But I say this because I actually had the incredible blessing to practice in the room with BKS Iyengar many years ago in Pune. And the Iyengar tradition is one of those that tends to get sort of just described as being very, very physical based. Oh, that's all physical. And the teaching is physical. The teaching is of the body, but of the body as a way in. And what I can tell you, and yes, it's obviously going to be a lot harder to get in that way than to get in by closing your eyes and, you know, meditating and praying. And everybody's trying to practice with him. And he was 80 something at the time. And, you know, they were all 30 something and nobody could keep up with him. He comes out of this very, very intense backbend that had all of his advanced students sweating and panting and their faces were red, and he comes out of it and his eyes look like he has just come out of the deepest meditation. The deepest meditation. He opens his eyes and there is that glow, that light, as though you had touched a sage or a rishi in his meditation, and he ever so kindly had opened his eyes to, see what you needed. That was the look in his eyes. So I wouldn't believe it possible if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. The other last point to mention on that is, because it's so difficult to still the mind, that particular tradition, which is what I was schooled in, it was fascinating for me because when I was taking yoga, I was not a meditator. I was not what I considered a spiritual person. I was taking yoga because I was a student and had aches and pains in the body from carrying backpacks in days before we had iPads. And my teacher was one of the top teachers in America, and really a drill sergeant in many, 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 many ways. And it's all about the muscles and the bones and the body. And he's not talking chakras, and he's not talking inner God, and he's not talking divinity, and he's talking, metatarsals, and he's talking femur bones, and he's talking, that's all he's talking. And that was fine for me. It was great for me. It was fantastic for my body, fantastic for the emotions in my mind. But when I came to India then and had this spiritual experience and developed a spiritual practice and became a meditator, and he came here one year. We were very blessed to have him come at Yoga Festival one year. And I went and took his class. It had been, a decade since I'd taken a class with him, if not more. And I went and took a class, and it was so incredible because he talks pretty much constantly for the full 90 minutes. And it's loud, and it's directed, and it's instructions. It's not things like, have faith in yourself, you can do it. It's things like, keep that leg straight. Keep that leg straight. Keep pushing harder, more. It's that. It's straighten that leg. It's rotate your hamstring. And it's way more than your brain can actually process. And I came out of it, and I said to him, Manuso, that was amazing. And he said, what do you mean? What was amazing? And I said, well, you have just basically shouted at us for 90 minutes. And my mind feels exactly the way it does when I come out of meditation. That stillness, even though I have spent 90 minutes sweating and trying to figure out where in the world my femur ends and my knee begins, and what the difference between my, outer, inner thigh and upper inner part of it, your mind gets boggled. So I've spent 90 minutes not thinking about God, not doing my mantra, not doing anything but figuring out how to keep, my metatarsals and metacarpals on the ground and in the right place they're supposed to be. And yet, my mind is so quiet. And he got this huge smile on his face. And he said, that's it. He said, if I stop talking, people's mind wanders. He said, I give you so much to do. He said, you don't think that I don't know you can't do all the things I've told you to do? I know your body. I know that you cannot simultaneously be focused on getting your, outer heel down and bending your front leg and extending out through your fingertips and your... I know you can't do that. You can't even get your heel down, let alone everything else at the same time. But if you are a sincere student, so if you don't in the midst of class say, forget this guy, and you actually sincerely stay with me and really try to get it, the mind becomes still. Because it's the mind can't actually do it all. But in the sincerity of the attempt to be in all of those places simultaneously, it's like a physical Zen cone, right? The Zen masters who give those cones, the cones of what's the sound of one hand clapping. Okay, well, there's no answer to that. I mean, they're not waiting for you to come up with the right answer. But if you, instead of saying, oh, this is a joke, if instead of that, you actually sincerely do what they say and meditate on it and try to understand and figure it out, you will reach a point where the mind just becomes still. It can't go any further in its thinking mind. And so the thinking mind just backs off. And what's left in its place is stillness. So he's actually doing the exact same thing with your bones and muscles of the body as the Zen teachers do with the mind. And so I mention all of this because as you're going in through the teachings of yoga, it's really important to know that all of those limbs, all of this, the body is a medium in. And yeah, it's harder. It's harder to get there, for most of us at least, in Trikonasana than it is seated with your eyes closed in meditation, assuming that you can meditate. But for a lot of people, they sit there, they close their eyes, and nothing happens. Or they sit there and close their eyes and the mind just... And what the real teachers of the physical body do is get you in there through the body. Through the body. So even that becomes a way in. If you can actually have that constant awareness, even of the body. This is where I took you full circle back to that. If the awareness, it's not that the awareness necessarily has to always be, I am consciousness, I am consciousness, I am consciousness. If the awareness can be unbroken of the movement even of the body, it gets you into that place of consciousness. It gets you beyond the body, through the body. And that's what yoga offers us through all the different ways. Yes. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. And as I mentioned in Aarti, we will be in the Kumbh Mela for the next 5 weeks. And so there won't be satsang here. There will be satsang there, which we will also stream live. And so you can tune in to satsang from the Sangam online. But also, you're already in India. So you may really want to think about coming there. As I said on the Ghat, it's a very, very special spiritual experience, an opportunity. And a train ride, a plane ride, either way, away. And so if that is something that you're interested in, it's a massive spiritual festival on the confluence of 3 sacred rivers, and we will have our own camp there with rooms and tents and everything there. And you're welcome to come and stay and be there with us. So if you'd like more information, Lori can get it to you, and Duji can get it for you as well, to come and join us there. Otherwise, stay connected with us and tune in online. Or if you're one of the lucky ones who will still be here at the end of Feb when we get back, then we'll see you all then.